2024 Mustang GT. This is the good stuff right now. We got our 6-speed manual. We got our drift brake, which I will get into later. We also have the brand spanking new interior. It's pretty good. Hello and welcome to the 2024 Mustang GT S650. We're finally here, the next Mustang. So if you're new to my channel, here's a little bit of backstory of why this is kind of important to me. My very first car was a New Edge Mustang, aka 99 to 04 Mustang GT. Then I had a 2006 3-valve Mustang GT. Finally graduated onto the mighty Coyote 5.0. And this was a 2013 Mustang GT that I still have to this day that makes 710 wheel horsepower on the stock engine, 93 octane, and still the MT82 manual transmission. Now, there's a few things about the S650 I really want to touch on. And number one is the interior. So the S650 is not so much a completely new car to me, rather than a rather extreme refresh. It's as far as you can go basically with the S550 in changing pretty much everything. The interior of the S650 is different than any other Mustang that has ever existed. They got rid of kind of the dual bulge style dash that's been around since the 60s. Finally ditched it. They finally said, let's try something completely new and different. And they did. And what they did was this sort of fighter jet inspired interior aimed towards the driver. The screens I thought were going to be insanely distracting. I thought they'd be in your face the entire time and just be like, oh, I just want my physical knobs back. That's all I want back. Well, I'm glad to report it's really not all that distracting. The other thing about this as well is that the sun never seems to glare on them. That was kind of one of the weird things I thought would be a problem in this car, is constant sun glare, right, on these screens and not being able to see it. If anything, even though we have a bigger screen, it actually decluttered the interface. On even the S197 back in the day, your track apps and everything were in this tiny little box between the gauges. Now, all of that is much more streamlined. There's room for activities on the dashboard, and that's really, really nice. Now, you can change your user interface so much that you could literally play around with these screens and settings and customization called My Mustang. You could play with it for over an hour and still not find everything. There is so much involvement and customization you can do, to the point that you can even make your gauges look like a Fox body Mustang. Almost at 8,000 RPM. In an American V8, man, and it's cross plane, not even flat plane. Can't make that excuse anymore. What I really like is that the heads-up display and all this stuff integrated into the screen uses Unreal Engine. So when you change into different driving modes, you get these cool animations and 3D models of the car to represent each mode. Yes, please. That is awesome, dude. Yeah, buddy. He also focused a lot more on the customization of this one. So you have a plethora of options when you actually build one of these. Okay, this factory exhaust sounds pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. So many people, in my opinion, put the wrong exhaust on this car, or the last cars, excuse me, and it just makes the Coyote have this reputation of being a super raspy engine. But no, this is a very smooth, very nice sounding exhaust. Now, of course, we got to talk about the 4th gen Coyote. Now, the 4th gen Coyote with 486 horsepower to the crank is really fascinating because we're so used to seeing that single intake. Now there's 2 intakes. So when you pop the hood, you're like, oh wow, that's pretty intense, man. So that's extra airflow. That's the secret sauce. That's how they make the power happen. That's also how they make the dark horse happen with the 500 horsepower in that model, which I hope I will eventually get to drive. Now, from a tuning perspective, as somebody who loves to modify cars, I am a smidge worried because there's rumors that this ECU is going to be completely locked, but you know what that means. Somebody will figure it out. Now, with the manual transmission, of course, I wish this was a Tremec. I 100% wish it was a Tremec. Every person ever who drives this car, that's like their #1 complaint, or in general with the last gen too. Now, this one in particular is the performance package, and in my opinion, you have to get the performance package. If you don't, you're really missing out, in my opinion. You get massive Brembo brakes. Yes. And at the same time, better wheels, better tires, and also you get the drift brake. Now, what is the drift brake? Well, the drift brake is something down next to my leg that looks like a hydro e-brake. And what it is it's actually electronic, but it feels hydraulic or analog. And it was developed by the guys at RTR. Chelsea and Vaughn worked very, very hard on this project, and they fine-tuned it and fine-tuned it. And now, as an option, you can get a drift brake in your Mustang. Also, of course, with the drift brake, it also means it comes with line lock, which if you don't know what line lock is, it'll do burnouts for drag racing and release the rear brakes so you don't destroy your rear brakes. I can actually set a shift light indicator to what RPM I want to shift at, which is really, really neat. Here's where you hit the drift brake. Here's launch control, which looks like a literal rocket. You have rev match on and off, so you can turn that off if you want. And then with my color, you can choose all these different colors you want for your gauges, your ambient lighting. It's completely RGB, which is super neat. The big thing for me is the steering in this car. Now, it has a brand new steering rack. It's 3% faster in its steering, so curvy roads feel even better than the S550. And the S550, with a good tire, good suspension setup, it was great. With the S650, it turns in faster. That's what I desired out of the S550, is just to turn in a smidge faster. And the MT82's gearing is pretty long, so your first gear, second gear, third gear, they're pretty strung out. You're gonna be in power a long time. Now let's talk about probably the most divisive thing about the S650, and that is the appearance of it. #1 thing though is people kept saying it looked like a Camaro. Okay, listen, one, the Camaro, unfortunately, RIP, by Camaro. The other thing though is both cars are fastbacks. Both cars use retro future styling with hard edges. This one especially uses those more hard, sharp edges in its styling, and the Camaro was doing that before, so I think that's where a lot of people were seeing the Camaro in this thing. The big thing for me though was the grille. I thought the grille looked way too big in the unveil. And then we saw the dark horse and we're like, oh yeah, we like that. I like the dark horse. What I realized that finally seeing this car in person, there's actually a black accented piece of trim underneath the grille. And what that does is make the mouth look a little bit smaller than I initially thought. So the grille is actually smaller than I thought officially. By adding that accent piece in, it was definitely the right move. One thing too is the angular kind of style of the trunk lid to the top of the car. A lot of people say it gives that kind of Elantra in vibe with the sharp edges, which I can kind of see, but I actually like it, to be honest with you. It grew on me from how aggressive it is. And then I like the wing on top. The wing on top reminds me of a PP2 wing from the S550, the 2018 S550. No, the car gets plenty of attention. That's another thing. People like looking at this thing. They like talking to you about it. They love seeing it the first time. Another thing is this kind of pattern they use on the interior is really nice. It's not like a knockoff carbon fiber, but it has a nice weave kind of look to it. It looks very modern, very retro future or cyberpunk. So one thing a lot of people are not crazy about, but I think is kind of neat, is if you have the 10-speed version of this car, you can park it and you can rev it with your key fob. So I don't recommend doing this if you have like a straight piped version or something. Please don't straight pipe these. It'll get way too raspy. What I'm saying is just as a funky little conversation starter or social flex, I think it's pretty cool. Just to be like, hey bro, check this out. Even kind of being like a meta feeling, kind of knowing it's silly, I think that's where it really is like, hey, check this out, vroom vroom. It's kind of silly, but it's also kind of neat that you can do that. So when you drive the S650 and you drive the S550, look, when you get into this car, it's gonna have a familiar feeling. And whether you find that as a good thing or a bad thing, I think that's up to you. When it comes to the driving dynamics, it feels like it's just that extra 20%, right? I don't think it's a 100% jump, but I could say it's a feelable jump. Like you feel it in your bones that it is different. The steering is a big part of that, but also the performance package really, really helps. At the same time, the 10-speed car is obviously blistering quick with almost 500 horsepower to the 10-speed auto. Of course, that's gonna be pretty bananas. I think the most impressive thing about the S650 is its ability to put the power down better than the S550. In a straight line, you are dead hooking every single gear, pretty much. And when it comes to cornering ability, since the gearing is fairly long, it's a predictable power band. On a mountain road like this, you are in second and third 99.9% of the time. Does great. Oh yeah. Earlier in the day, when I was driving the red one, my first impression was like, oh yeah, it's a better S550. And honestly, after lunch, I really got to kind of like soak it in more. And now that I've had more seat time in the car, I'm starting to notice the new feeling of the car more. Earlier in the day, I was kind of seeing the limits of things, seeing what it didn't like, what it does like, and now I feel super confident in it. Even cruising in third gear around these bends is just a piece of cake. Dude, out of the box, just from that right there, value per dollar is very, very good. This car is pricey, but you and I both know that every sports car out there now is kind of too expensive. This one with the V8, with the high revving V8, with almost 500 horsepower, you literally can't beat that. And when it comes to also, if you're wondering from an aftermarket point of view, I can give you some insight. My 2JZ car, my K-Series cars, all have more money in those things to make less power than my bone stock Coyotes. My 10-speed makes 750 wheel and 93 octane, and it's a bone stock drivetrain. Let's take like the Focus ST, for example. Had really good brakes, but the brake feel was very touchy. So you would basically barely hit the brake and it would go, ugh, and you'd be like, okay, I gotta get used to this. With this, it's very progressive. So if you wanna be really aggressive on the brakes, you can, and it stops immediately. The S650's biggest uphill battle, in my opinion, is I don't think there's ever going to be as big of a jump in the Mustang legacy from the S197 to the S550. When you went from the 3-valve S197 to the Coyote S197, then to the S550, it was a game changer. People's entire perception on the Mustang finally started to change. The days of saying Mustangs can't handle and all that stuff were finally gone. And if you're new here, yes, Mustangs can handle. They're not old 60s muscle cars anymore. That is a thing of the past. In fact, the Mustang is barely a muscle car anymore, in my opinion. It's a full-blown sports car now. That's why Mustangs, in my opinion, have been the absolute best in the past 10 years of their entire history. These Coyote motors changed the game for Ford and gave people some respect for the brand that didn't before. And that's what I really love about it. If people are like value per dollar, 99.9% of the time, I just say Mustang. For drifting, for road racing, for anything, daily driving, it does everything, and it's under $50,000. But it is sad though, like my S197 back in the day, GT I got for like 31 grand. And then the next one I got, my used 10-speed one I got for 32 grand. But that was used, fair enough. Out of the box, yeah, things are just pricier now. But I will say, this interior feels premium, it feels good. Is also competitively priced against some JDM cars like the Mark V Supra and the Nissan Z. So what is my opinion on that? Well, first things first, they're just so different. It's really hard to make comparisons, but the manual Supra is a really fun car, but it's kind of claustrophobic for most people. Not great visibility, but the manual in that car is fantastic. And the Nissan Z has a little bit more for me to be desired, so I would definitely take the S650 over the new Z. But if you're looking for an inline six or a 6-cylinder car, I would go for the Supra. If you're looking for a V8 car, I would go for the S650. Also, these Recaro seats don't break your freaking back. That was a big problem in some of the other ones, especially in the Focus RS, where you had to really break them in over time. The first impression was always very harsh on your body. These are not that harsh on your body, and they've kept me in place all day long. Now, the steering wheel feels very, very good, in my opinion. Some people will find it too big. I do like the flat bottom look that would only be in the GT500 or something like that. But the 9 and 3 position is where this wheel shines. It has place for your thumbs to put, and it just feels really nice in your hands. The only thing it's gonna struggle with is that it doesn't feel like as big of a change psychologically, even though it is a pretty big change. It's a sharp looking car, figuratively and literally. It's got them sharp edges though. Also, the hood comes with a factory heat extractor or hood vent, which is a really, really nice touch so you don't have to cut into your hood and make that happen, or that it looks fake, which is even more of a crime. Fake hood vents. Let's stop the trend. Another little touch that I noticed was they finally got rid of the prop rod. That's one thing I noticed when you pop the hood. The other thing is that every generation of the Mustang is actually etched in the rear glass. I thought that was really, really neat. Even the Mustang 2. They even gave credit to the Mustang 2. But I think it's cool that they're doing a thing where they go, hey, we know we're making a big change or a small change or a big overhaul, but we don't forget what the Mustang is. Okay, Mustang S650. What do I think of it? What a cool opportunity to drive the brand new spanking Mustang. Couldn't be more thankful. Huge thanks to Ford just for letting me fly out, give my thoughts on it as a Mustang owner for 15 plus years now. And it's just so cool seeing the progression of this platform and this culture and everything get bigger and bigger throughout the years. What do you guys like or don't like about the Mustang S650? Put it down in the comment section below. And on that note, I upload on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, and I will see you guys next time. Take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.